Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Terry Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion, learn the truth behind the alcohol myths, and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge. Hey everyone, it's Terry back with another edition of the Sober Edge podcast, and I'm excited to share with you a couple of things. One is my delight in coming to you right around the corner from reaching 9 years alcohol-free. My 9-year anniversary will be a couple of days after this episode airs, and I decided to do a two-part episode because I want to share with you how difficult, challenging, amazing, beautiful, complicated, and empowering this journey has been. All of those things. And I realized that I often tell my clients and share with all of you, my listeners, this idea that becoming alcohol-free and living alcohol-free are two parts of this journey. And so I decided that I would love to share with you this opportunity to take this opportunity to share how becoming alcohol free kind of happened for me, what it was like in those early days. And then I would want to follow up next week with living alcohol free. So I invite you along for the ride for this two-part episode. I'm excited to be sharing this with you, and I couldn't be more delighted to have begun this podcast a few years ago, and now being able to reach all of you on this very special anniversary of 9 years alcohol-free. I also, before I get started today, the second thing I'm excited to share is a unique opportunity for you. If you have ever wondered about, dreamed about, or inspired to become an alcohol-free coach, I want you to drop what you're doing, including listening to this episode, and I want you to apply to the alcohol-free coaching certification that is run by my friend and mentor, Karolina Jaskowolska. And Karolina and I have had the privilege of working together. She was my business coach. We both trained as This Naked Mind coaches. We put on a retreat together for business entrepreneurs in the alcohol-free space. And she is someone that I admire, I trust, and I'm so excited that she is offering this premium package for you to become a 5-time certified empowered AF coach. And so all the details are linked in the show notes. But what gets me really excited about this is it's the exact training I would have wanted when I was exploring becoming an alcohol-free coach. Something like this didn't exist at that time, but now Karolina has such a beautiful offer. Not only do you have the opportunity to become 5 times certified, you also get an all expenses paid trip to a live in-person retreat and then a 4-month business mastermind to help you learn and scale the business of being a successful alcohol-free coach. Because let's face it, becoming a coach is not enough. You need to be successful and profitable so that you can continue being a coach. And Karolina has got an incredible offer. So I'm going to share those links in the show notes. There is an affiliate link. And if you use this affiliate link to sign up, get interviewed, apply, get interviewed, and join, you will also get $1,000 off the certification. And Karolina has already shared that prices are going up for 2025. This is a highly respected and sought after coaching certification. So I hope if this is you, you'll take advantage. The doors are closing soon. So don't wait, apply today. All right. Well, it started for me many years before October 18th, 2015. That was my date of alcohol freedom. But prior to that, like many of you, I was in this place of trying to decide how bad my drinking really was. I knew that it was bugging me, that I felt awful, that I was concerned that I was drinking more than I wanted to, that I was concerned it was challenging to stop. But there was so many cultural messages that I was drinking like everyone else. Nobody had ever told me, "You have a drinking problem." No one had ever told me I should cut back. I hadn't missed work or blown up my life because of drinking. And so I was caught in that place for a long time of instead of trying to figure out how to stop, I was trying to figure out how to continue drinking. And that was a place where I felt stuck for a long time. And so I share this part of my story because I believe that becoming alcohol free was a huge gift that I gave to myself. And I realize now that I was the only person that could really give myself this gift. So if you are contemplating changing your relationship with alcohol, I hope you will look at it like a gift. Now, having said that, was it easy in the beginning? Not necessarily. Was I scared? Hell yes. So while I was not sure exactly what my life would look like, I did know what my life was like in those couple of years before October 18th, 2015. So, as I come upon 9 years alcohol free, I'm just going to share a little bit about my journey. And so, for me, I had been contemplating drinking less for a long time. In fact, when I was interviewed recently on the Sober Summit with Maggie Classens, I recognized that in 2000, I actually wanted to stop drinking. I considered at the age of 40 that I would not drink anymore. And I set the idea aside. We were in what I considered a very boozy neighborhood. Lots of socializing, lots of partying, lots of big events, drinking, lots of fun. We had young kids, and at some point, I felt like the drinking was interfering with my family and with me really feeling connected to my family. I felt like my husband and I were in this trajectory where it was all about socializing and how much we could drink and what we could drink and how much fun we could have with our neighbors versus creating these really special memories with our young children. And so I was already feeling kind of this tension between how I was showing up and how I wanted to show up. But the reality is, I didn't stop drinking for 15 years. And the thing is, in that 15 years, I went back and forth, with deciding that I was fine drinking the amount I was drinking. And then I would decide that I wanted to drink less. And sometimes I would take breaks. And so in 2000, we moved to the country out of the Silicon Valley Bay Area home that we had lived in. And that brought a lot of new challenges, trying to find new friends and fit in socially and not working in the beginning. And my husband also took a break from working. And so we were kind of living this party life because we were in a new location. We didn't have as many obligations. We were hanging out with new friends. And in some ways, my drinking ramped up, even though one of the reasons I really wanted to move was to leave behind that neighborhood. And flash news alert, no one will be surprised, but wherever you go, there you are. And so the person that went along and moved from the country, from the city to or the suburbs to the country was me. And so when I got to the country, there I was, still there, still drinking with some tension around how much I was drinking and the fact that I really wanted to drink less. And so I tell you all this because those 15 years were not all bad. In fact, many wonderful things happened, lots of fun trips, lots of experiences, lots of time to spend with my family because we weren't as pulled apart by our old neighborhood or neighbors. Not that it was anything to do with them, but we just had fallen into that pattern. And so we met lots of new friends, and my children were in 4 H. We bought a horse, we had property, we got livestock. My husband raised hogs. It was beautiful. And yet, in the background, throughout this time, I knew or felt many times that there was a fine line with my drinking, that I would cross that line a lot. There was a statement I think I've shared before on the podcast, but we heard of, my husband and I heard sort of a funny line, and it said, there's a fine line between Saturday night and Sunday morning. And sometimes I would find myself sitting at church Sunday morning with a hangover, feeling so inauthentic, feeling so broken. And I wanted that change. And so many things led to that final moment on October 18th of 2015 when I told my husband, I'm not going to drink anymore and I might need to go to meetings. And prior to that, just prior to that, that morning, I had heard that still small voice more as a roar when I told myself, I don't want to stop drinking. I don't want people to think I'm a drunk. And I don't want people to, look at me differently if I have to go to AA. And I don't know how to do this. And I was really crying out to God, to the universe. And I heard this voice. Would you rather be known as a drunk, or would you rather be known as someone who goes to meetings? Ouch. That felt like a real slap. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm prioritizing how I look to other people over my own relationship with myself, with my God, with others, how backwards my priorities had gotten. And so I took a big gulp and I went out and I told my husband, I wasn't going to drink anymore. And I never said, I'm going to take a 30-day break or I'm going to stop for a year. I knew I was done. I had spent those 15 years having that conversation many times. And so becoming alcohol free began with that firm decision. And I've talked before about this idea of a firm decision, and I know it can feel scary. We often talk about our brain doesn't really understand or grasp forever. But I will say that by making a firm decision, I was able to let go of the how much should I be drinking and can I drink tonight and when can I drink again and what if I'm drinking too much? All of that went away. And all I had to do was focus on the how. How do I get through each day without drinking? So once drinking was off the table, it was a huge relief. And so while it was hard, the hard part was not wrestling with my decision. The hard part was what to do with the energy and the time that I now had. Because I spent a lot of time numbing and tamping down that energy that I had. And so if you're anything like me, and let me just reiterate, I was a quote unquote normal drinker, like not somebody who was really, wasn't day drinking. I wasn't driving drunk. I wasn't blowing my life up, like I said, but I was coming home each day at 4:30, 5 o'clock and pouring that first drink and drinking several drinks each night, falling asleep on the couch, sometimes watching a movie, stumbling off to bed, sometimes forgetting to wash off my makeup. And that was sucking the life out of me. And it was taking so much time. And so the first thing that happened for me when I stopped drinking was I had so much time and energy. I was feeling so anxious and I was taking lots of walks and I would stand up at night while my husband and I were watching a show, and I would pace behind the couch, back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes I would do push ups on the floor or jumping jacks because I had too much energy. I had been turning off that energy. And what I now understand about the way alcohol works is it actually was my brain was slowing down. It was turning off my thoughts and it was turning down my energy, my coordination, all of that. And so I was suddenly this person with, all of this angstiness and it felt like I was literally crawling out of my skin. And I've told this story before, but sometimes I would take my dog for a walk when I got home in the evenings to give myself something to do. And then sometimes I would come home and I'd turn right around and go out for another walk because I just couldn't be still. And so part of becoming alcohol free for me was learning how to regulate my energy, learning how to be still. One of the things that I believe is at the root for many of us with our alcohol use disorder and our drinking and over drinking is the inability to be still, to be comfortable in the uncomfortable moments, to be bored, to be restless. And so part of becoming alcohol free for me was learning how to navigate all of that. And one of the things that happened for me is within the first, 2 weeks, I believe it was, my husband and I went on a vacation with some of his old high school friends. And so we stayed in a house together in the Monterey Bay area. And we had some great things planned. We had bikes planned and we had kayaking planned and we had going to the aquarium. But there was also a lot of drinking and day drinking and a long boozy lunch with old high school friends of my husband's. And I was just I knew I wasn't gonna drink, that was not the issue, and I didn't really even have any cravings to drink, but I knew I needed to do something with my time, and so that afternoon when everyone was reminiscing about high school and having more drinks, I grabbed the one other person who didn't drink and I said, "Let's go for a bike ride." And we did. And I realized very early on that having something to do was going to be key, that I needed to plan my alcohol free time. And it's interesting because now, as an alcohol free coach and being involved in a lot of other programs that other people put on, programs I've created, reading lots of books, seeing lots of examples of how to navigate this free time, I see that I inherently did a few things or instinctively did a few things that were really helpful. I didn't know it at the time because I didn't have a coach. I didn't go to AA. I didn't go to any groups. I didn't go to online meetings. I didn't join anything. I didn't even read any Quit Lit books. I didn't realize they were available. I just kind of hunkered down and noticed what was happening and then strategized what felt best. And this is why sometimes I was wildly uncomfortable, but I also didn't drink. And I didn't have a lot of cravings. So sometimes when you hear people say, well, it felt easy, it can be just because letting go of the back and forth, the indecision, can free up a lot of energy to focus on what we can do. And for me, I've always been kind of that glass half full person. And so it felt very good to have something that I could move toward. So rather than feeling like it was all about letting go of drinking, it was really about what I was moving toward. And so for me, one of the things that happened that was really key was I was delivered this divine opportunity to do something with my life that had not been on my radar when I was drinking. So I'll back up just a little bit. I've always been a personal development junkie. I love personal growth. And one of the things that happened for me was I joined a couple of different multi-level marketing companies, love them, hate them, whatever. What really was the driving force for me was the connection with other people and the personal growth. Being around people who were growing and challenging themselves and learning and going to these big company-wide retreats and listening to personal development speakers was huge for me. I loved it. It was a real touch point for me in my life. And so one of the companies I had been with just prior to my not drinking had a wellness component. And so I would actually take people on a wellness journey using some of the products and supplements. And one of the things was always to take a 30-day break from alcohol while we were taking a break from some other foods and such. And so I had been in this sort of wellness enthusiast world. I always consider myself a wellness enthusiast, right? Because I didn't have any formal training, but I was sharing my passion and I was sharing my own experience and I had these products. And so in my small town, I would invite other women to do this 30-day break, and it always included not drinking for 30 days. So when I stopped drinking and I had all this time and energy, a few months after I stopped drinking. So I stopped drinking in October, and on New Year's Day of 2016, I opened the front page of our local paper, and there was an interview with a woman in my small town who had started her own nutrition business. And she had actually opened a shop with a friend. And I was reading with fascination about her business. And I looked at where she had trained as a nutritionist and I started researching it and I got very excited. Like, what if I went to nutrition school? What if I took my wellness enthusiasm and became a wellness professional? What if I could take all this time and energy and apply it to something exciting, something that would help me move forward in my life, something to aspire to rather than just no longer drinking? And again, I didn't realize that this was sort of one of the keys was having something positive that you look forward to in your life, but it showed up for me at the perfect time. And so I called this woman up and I said, "Could I have coffee with you and ask you about this nutrition program?" And she said, "Absolutely." And so I left work early one day. We met for coffee. And within a month, I was enrolled in the Nutritional Therapy Association. And my friend Tiana became one of my mentors as a nutritionist. And so this was part of my journey to becoming alcohol free, was this beautiful place where now I had the time and energy to become a better version of me, someone who pursued her passion, someone who was looking to give back to the community, someone who trusted herself and believed herself enough to make a commitment of time and resources to do something that, like I said, I never would have felt compelled or even capable of when I had been drinking. And so I believe that there are no coincidences in life. I think that this journey was divinely appointed for me. And what I had to do was I had to show up. I had to lean in. I had to leap and risk. And that was such a beautiful part of my journey as well in becoming alcohol free. And so this happened like 3 months in. And while this was going on and I suddenly had, courses to take and books to read and people to connect with, and it was amazing. And I was learning so much. It was so fun. I was still working full time and I was still having some of this excess emotional energy that comes from breaking up with alcohol. And for me, that really showed up as anger. And I had a lot of anger. And one of the things that was kind of going on in the background was, my husband was still drinking and I was kind of fallen into this place of resentment. And I don't know even today if I could say that I was resenting that he could drink and I couldn't, because I didn't really feel any desire to drink again. But I was sensing this dynamic in our relationship that was uncomfortable. And so it was actually my husband's suggestion because of my anger and just kind of irritability that we go to marriage counseling. And we did. And it was not something I would have chosen, but I am so grateful because it was wildly uncomfortable, and yet we did it and we grew closer. And one of the things about becoming alcohol free is that we do have this opportunity, not just the opportunity, but we have a responsibility to work on our communication styles. For me, one of the things that really came out of becoming alcohol free was I wasn't a good communicator. I was more of an avoider. I still struggle with that. I have to work at it. And I've grown so much in these 9 years. But in those first 9 months of being alcohol free, I was still undoing some of these negative patterns. And so I had been so used to not addressing anything. And when things were uncomfortable, just sweeping them under the rug or feeling, hurt and then retreating. And so I wasn't good at stating what I needed or asking for help or standing up for myself. All of those communication styles I had to relearn or learn for the first time. And so that was a huge part of my becoming alcohol free. And so I think we were in marriage counseling for maybe 9 months. And so by the time I got through my certification, I graduated in November of 2016 and started my health coaching business. Was really in a much better place. So that first year for me is kind of what I consider becoming alcohol free. And it started again prior to that. It really started in about 2000. And so all the way from 2000 to 2016 is really this journey of becoming alcohol free. And so wherever you are in your journey, just know that it's part of your journey. Even if you are questioning your amount of drinking or how you feel when you drink or how you show up when you drink, maybe you've wrestled with moderation and it hasn't gone well. Maybe you've taken some breaks and you've gone back to drinking. Maybe you're just in that place of justifying your drinking. All of that, I think, is part of our journey to becoming alcohol free. And so I wanted to really share that today because I don't know if I've ever told this story in one kind of piece because bits and parts of it come out as I, present this podcast and share in my newsletters and offer my different programs and meet with you who are clients. But I wanted to really take this opportunity at 9 years to say, this what it's been on my heart. And I also wanted to, like I said, do it in 2 parts. And so next week, or the next time I do the podcast, I really am excited to share about, what I've learned on this journey and, what is now ahead of me not just with becoming alcohol free, but what I've learned about living alcohol free and moving beyond being an alcohol or a health coach into an alcohol freedom coach and all that's changed and opened up for me. Like there's so much personal growth in this journey. And one thing I will share is in my newsletter this week to go along with this podcast episode. I shared 4 things that I've embraced in my alcohol free life. And I think they kind of relate to the becoming alcohol free. And so I want to share those here in the podcast as well. So here are 4 things that I've embraced in my alcohol free life. The first is vulnerability. Choosing to become alcohol free and to live an alcohol free life out loud, like actually tell people, is a deep dive into vulnerability. Number 2, imperfection. I used to let uncertainty and looking foolish hold me back. I thought that playing small kept me safe. I now realize that I can make mistakes and admit mistakes and I will survive. And sometimes I will even feel better. Number 3 is risk. I started trusting myself again, allowing myself to take bigger risks, knowing that I had my own back. For so long, I was unsure of myself. My no didn't mean no, and my yes didn't mean yes. I was paralyzed from taking risks. And the fourth thing that I've learned and embraced in my alcohol-free life is friendships. I lived my whole life wondering if I was a good friend. Was I deserving of close girlfriends? Living a life aligned with my true self has allowed me the gift of friendship. I no longer hold back, and instead I lean in. I now see myself as someone who is a good friend and who has good friends. What a beautiful shift. So next week, I will share 5 more things that I've learned in these past 9 years, and I'll talk a little bit more about what life looks like today. So we'll go from that first year of becoming alcohol-free into these 8 years of living alcohol-free. I hope you'll join me, and I look forward to having this conversation. Be well. I want to thank you for tuning in to the Sober Edge podcast. This is a place for important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I want to invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, Becoming More, a guide to loving your sober life. And I would be so grateful if you enjoyed this podcast, if you would leave a rating and review, as it will help more people find their sober edge.